We used my brother as a financial safety net for years. His wife opened his eyes, and he took back my minivan, and left us to go bankrupt. My name is Mark. I'm 32 years old, and up until about 8 months ago, I was the ultimate doormat for my family. I was the reliable one, the easygoing one, the son who never caused a fuss and always picked up the tab. I thought being low maintenance made me a good son. I thought it meant they respected me. It turns out, it just made me an easy target. I need to tell you about the dinner that completely blew up my family, and the insane sequence of events that followed, ending with a twist that I still can barely wrap my head around. Before we get to the downtown seafood grill and the lobster incident, you need to understand the dynamic of my family. I grew up in a seemingly normal suburban household of 4. Me, my younger sister Chloe, now 29, and our parents, Robert and Helen. From the outside, we were the picture of middle-class stability. But inside those walls, there was a very clear, unspoken hierarchy, and absolutely everything revolved around Chloe. I'm not saying my parents didn't love me. I'm sure they did in their own way. But there is a massive difference between loving your child and prioritizing them. Chloe was the priority. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. When we were teenagers, the disparity became impossible to ignore, even though I tried my hardest to blind myself to it. When Chloe turned 16, there was a brand new sedan waiting in the driveway with a giant red bow on it. When I turned 16 2 years earlier, I was told that if I picked up extra shifts at the grocery store where I bagged groceries, I might be able to afford a used clunker by the time I graduated. When Chloe wanted to join a competitive cheerleading squad, my parents drove her 2 hours each way, 4 times a week, and dropped thousands on uniforms and travel fees. When I asked to join a travel soccer team, my dad sat me down and gave me a lecture about fiscal responsibility, telling me it was too expensive and too far. I believed them. I didn't even question it. That's the tragedy of being the kid who gets less. You don't realize you're being shortchanged because you've never known anything else. You just assume that's how the world operates. Some kids get the shiny new toys, and some get the hand-me-downs. When it came to college, the gap widened into a canyon. I went to an in-state public university. I paid my own way through a grueling combination of student loans, 2 part-time jobs, and a diet consisting of so much instant ramen that my blood pressure is probably still recovering. Chloe, on the other hand, went to an elite private university. I assumed she had loans too. I didn't find out the truth until 3 years after I graduated. We were at Thanksgiving dinner, and my mom casually mentioned, like she was talking about the weather, "Oh, we covered Chloe's tuition in full, so she wouldn't have to stress, and could focus on her journey." I just sat there, chewing my turkey, nodding like an absolute idiot. What was I supposed to say? Mark the Agreeable was my designated role. After college, I landed a solid job in logistics. It wasn't flashy, but it paid well. I worked my ass off, climbed the ladder, and eventually became a regional operations manager. I bought a modest house, drove a reliable car, and lived strictly within my means. Meanwhile, Chloe bounced between careers like a pinball. She did fashion merchandising for 6 months, event planning for a year, real estate for about 3 weeks, and then settled into some vague lifestyle consulting gig that mostly involved posting heavily filtered photos on Instagram and calling it a business. Through every single failed venture, my parents bailed her out. They paid her rent, covered her car lease, and funded her startup costs. I never said a word. Then I met Sarah. Sarah is a force of nature. She is sharp, fiercely loyal, and has a built-in radar for manipulation that is downright terrifying. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party, and within 20 minutes, we were huddled in the kitchen making sarcastic comments about the host's terrible Spotify playlist. I knew I was going to marry her by our 3rd date. We dated for 2 years, and had a beautiful, small wedding at a botanical garden. Even at our wedding, my family's dynamic bled through. During the reception, my mom spent 45 minutes cornering my new wife's family to talk about how Chloe was finding her true calling, and how proud she was of Chloe's aesthetic journey. Sarah noticed. She didn't cause a scene, but her eyes cataloged everything. Once we were married, the family dinners continued. Every 3 weeks, my parents would invite us out to dinner. Sometimes, Chloe would bring whatever guy she was dating that month. And every single time, the exact same script played out. My parents would pick a nice, slightly upscale restaurant. We would sit down. Chloe would order the most expensive items on the menu: top-shelf cocktails, premium appetizers, extravagant entrees, and a dessert she'd take 2 bites of. My parents would order modestly. I would order something mid-range. When the check came, the table would go completely silent. My dad would look at his watch. My mom would stare at the ceiling. Chloe would be busy texting. And my dad would subtly slide his eyes toward me. And I, like a trained circus animal, would reach out, grab the leather folder, and drop my credit card. I'm not talking about splitting the bill. I'm talking about covering the entire thing. Every single time. I'd drop $250, sometimes $350, without blinking, because that's what Mark does. Mark is successful. Mark is reliable. Mark pays. Sarah noticed this immediately. At first, she brought it up gently. Hey, did you notice your dad didn't even pretend to reach for his wallet tonight? Or, Chloe, ordered a $45 steak and 3 margaritas, and didn't even look at you to say thank you. I would brush it off. They're my family, it's fine. I'd say. Chloe is going through a rough transition. Or my favorite excuse, it's just dinner, Sarah. It's not worth the fight. But it was never just dinner. It was a calculated system of exploitation, and I was the willing victim. I volunteered for it because, deep down, a pathetic part of my inner child believed that if I stopped paying, they would stop inviting me. That illusion violently shattered on a Thursday night in October. My parents had invited us to a fancy downtown seafood grill. It was a high-end place with dim lighting, white tablecloths, and waiters in vests. Sarah and I arrived and sat down. Chloe was already there with her newest boyfriend, a guy named Chad who wore too much cologne and talked about cryptocurrency like he was the second coming of Steve Jobs. My parents were in a great mood. The conversation was flowing. Everything felt normal. Then, Sarah got up to use the restroom. She told me later exactly how it happened. To get to the restrooms, you had to walk down a narrow hallway past the private dining alcoves. As she was walking back toward our table, she realized she had left her purse on her chair. She paused behind a large decorative pillar to fix her shoe. That's when she heard my mother's voice. My mom wasn't whispering. She wasn't being discreet. She spoke in the casual, matter-of-fact tone of someone giving driving directions. Order the lobster, Chloe. And get the crab dip too. He won't say a word. He's too well trained. Sarah froze. She said it felt like all the air had been sucked out of the restaurant. My own mother wasn't just passively accepting my generosity. She was actively coaching my sister on how to exploit me. She was the architect of the scam. Sarah didn't storm the table. She walked back, sat down next to me, and slid her hand onto my thigh under the table. Her grip was tight. I looked at her, and her jaw was locked. I knew my wife. I knew that look. A storm was coming, and I had no idea I was standing at ground zero. For the rest of the dinner, Sarah was unnervingly quiet. She just watched. She watched as Chloe ordered the twin lobster tails. She watched as Chad ordered the surf and turf combo that cost more than my first car payment. She watched as my parents ordered their modest chicken dishes. I ordered a salmon fillet. Sarah, who absolutely loves seafood, ordered a side salad and a glass of tap water. That should have been my massive red flag. A side salad was Sarah's version of loading a shotgun. The conversation droned on. Chloe started talking about her latest pivot. She wanted to become a certified life coach. It requires a $4,000 immersive retreat in Vegas, she said, swirling her $18 cocktail. But it's going to totally align my chakras for business. My mom nodded like this was the most profound thing she had ever heard. Then, my mom turned to me, her eyes gleaming with expectation. You know, Mark, you should really help Chloe out with that retreat fee. It would be a beautiful way to support your sister's journey. I opened my mouth. I felt the familiar, spineless words forming on my tongue. Sure, Mom. We can look at the budget. Before a single syllable could escape my lips, Sarah's fingernails dug into my knee under the table. It was a warning grip. Do not speak. That sounds like a huge investment, Sarah said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. I'm sure Chloe has a solid business plan and savings to cover it. The table went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Chloe stared at Sarah like she had just sprouted a second head. My dad suddenly became intensely focused on his napkin. My mom's smile tightened into a thin, white line. Well, my mom stammered, family helps family, Sarah. That's just how we do things. Interesting, Sarah replied, taking a slow sip of her water. Then, the waiter arrived. He placed the black leather check folder right in the center of the table. The ritual began, the grand performance. My dad looked away. Chloe picked up her phone. My mom took a sudden interest in the ceiling architecture. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Out of pure, ingrained reflex, my hand started to move toward the folder. I couldn't help it. 32 years of conditioning pushed my arm forward. My fingers were an inch away when Sarah's hand shot out. She grabbed the leather folder, opened it, glanced at the $350 total, and then calmly, deliberately, slid it across the white tablecloth until it hit my mother's water glass with a soft clink. Your turn, Sarah said. 2 words. 2 words that detonated a nuclear bomb in my family's carefully constructed reality. My mom stared at the folder like it was a venomous snake. Where was that philosophy when I was eating instant noodles in college, while you fully funded Chloe's private university? Where was that philosophy when I was working 2 jobs, while you bought Chloe a brand new car? You have funded her entire life, and she is still drowning. Giving her $65,000 isn't helping her, it's just reloading the gun. How dare you speak to us like this in our own home? My mother shrieked, standing up from the table. Your sister has a sensitive soul. She struggles with the pressures of the world. You have always been cold and calculated. Nah. I'm not cold, Mom. I'm just finally awake. I stood up as well. I am not signing away a single dime of my inheritance. Grandma wanted me to have that money, and I am going to keep it. If Chloe needs money, she can get a job at the grocery store like I did when I was 16. Chloe burst into theatrical, heaving sobs. You're ruining my life. You're so incredibly selfish, she wailed, burying her face in her hands. We are done here, I said, turning to Sarah. Sarah stood up, calmly wiped her mouth with her napkin, and tossed it onto her half-eaten slice of cherry pie. She looked directly at my mother. You blew up this family over a lobster, Helen, Sarah said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. And now you're trying to pick his pockets on the way out. Enjoy the pie. We walked out. The front door slammed behind us, echoing in the quiet suburban night. If I thought the fallout from the restaurant was bad, the aftermath of the inheritance refusal was apocalyptic. By Sunday morning, my phone had 17 missed calls and a string of unhinged voicemails from my father, calling me a traitor, a sociopath, and a disgrace to the family name. Chloe sent me a massive wall of text detailing how I was the reason she was having a panic attack and how my greed was actively destroying her mental health. I didn't reply to any of it. I took screenshots, saved the voicemails, and put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Then, on Tuesday afternoon, I got a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Mark? It's Aunt Martha. Aunt Martha is my mom's older sister. She has always lived out of state, and we rarely spoke outside of holidays. She was a no-nonsense retired high school principal who had never quite fit in with my mother's pretentious suburban lifestyle. Hi, Aunt Martha, I said cautiously. I heard what happened at the dinner on Saturday, Martha said. Her voice was crisp. Your mother called me in tears, claiming you violently screamed at them and demanded all the money from the house. I let out an exhausted sigh. Martha, that's not what happened. They tried to force me to sign over my $65,000 share to Chloe to pay off her Vegas credit card debt. I refused, and we left. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, Martha let out a dark, knowing chuckle. I knew it. I knew Helen would try to pull something exactly like this. Listen to me very carefully, Mark. Your grandmother is losing her memory, but 2 years ago, she was sharp as a tack. She knew exactly who your mother was, and she knew exactly how Chloe was favored. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Your grandmother updated her trust 2 years ago, Martha explained. She specifically wrote in an anti-coercion clause regarding your share. She told the estate lawyer, Mr. Vance, that she suspected Helen would try to divert your inheritance to Chloe. The trust dictates that your $65,000 must be paid directly into an account solely in your name. Helen cannot touch it. Furthermore, if Helen attempts to block the sale, or illegally reallocate the funds, she forfeits her role as co-executor to me entirely. I had to sit down on the edge of my bed. My grandmother, the sweet woman who used to bake me cookies and let me catch fireflies in her yard, had seen everything. She had seen the neglect. She had seen the favoritism, and from her declining state, she had set up a legal fortress to protect me. I started crying again, but this time, it was out of profound gratitude. Thank you, Martha. I choked out. Don't thank me yet, Martha warned. Helen is desperate, more desperate than you realize. You need to hire your own attorney to represent your interests during the house sale. Do not trust your parents. I took her advice. The next morning, I hired a sharp estate litigation lawyer named Mr. Vance, the same firm Grandma used. It was the smartest money I ever spent. Because 2 weeks later, the ultimate, mind-bending twist of this entire saga dropped. Mr. Vance requested a full financial disclosure of the estate and ran background checks on the executors, my mom and Martha, to ensure no conflicts of interest. During this process, Mr. Vance uncovered a massive, glaring secret that my parents had been hiding from everyone. My parents didn't just want my $65,000 to bail out Chloe, they needed the money to save themselves from imminent financial ruin. 3 years ago, when Chloe started her luxury event planning business, she needed a massive amount of capital. No bank would lend to her. So, my parents, in their infinite delusion, took out a massive second mortgage on their own house to fund her business. They handed Chloe over $150,000. Chloe blew it all in less than a year on expensive office space, luxury company cars, and extravagant networking parties. The business went under. My parents were left holding the bag on a massive second mortgage that they couldn't afford on my dad's salary. They had been secretly drowning in debt for 3 years. They had maxed out their own credit cards just to keep up appearances, which suddenly explained why they were so eager for me to pay for the $350 dinners every few weeks. They literally couldn't afford to eat out, but their pride wouldn't let them stop playing the wealthy suburbanites. The bank had issued a pre-foreclosure notice on my parents' house just 2 weeks before the restaurant incident. Their master plan was to sell Grandma's house. They were going to take Mom's $130,000, force me to give Chloe my $65,000, and then have Chloe gift them back the money so they could pay off the second mortgage and stop the foreclosure. By refusing to sign over my share, I had unknowingly pulled the final block out of their incredibly fragile house of cards. When Mr. Vance presented me with these documents, I was speechless. The sheer scale of the lies, the deception, the financial recklessness, it was staggering. Mr. Vance sent a formal legal notice to my parents, informing them that I was fully aware of the trust stipulations and their current financial distress. He warned them that any attempt to tamper with my inheritance would result in immediate reports of elder financial abuse and fraud. The threat of criminal charges finally broke them. My mother completely folded. The house sale went through smoothly 3 months later. The property actually sold for a little over asking, and my final cut came out to just over $68,000. The money was wired directly into a high-yield savings account in my name. I used it, along with the massive bonus from my new director job, to put a hefty down payment on a beautiful, 5-bedroom house for Sarah and me in a quiet, upscale neighborhood. We are currently trying for our first baby, and life has never been better. As for my family, the fallout was absolute carnage. Chloe received her $68,000 share. Instead of paying off her $40,000 credit card debt, she paid the minimum balances, rented a luxury penthouse apartment downtown that cost $4,000 a month, bought a designer dog, and threw a massive rebranding party. According to cousin Ben, she was completely broke again within 5 months and is currently facing eviction. My parents received their $136,000 share, Mom's cut, but it wasn't enough. Because of the accumulated interest, late fees, and their own maxed-out credit cards, the $136,000 barely made a dent in the arrears of their second mortgage. The bank refused to restructure the loan. 6 weeks ago, my childhood home, the house where I was told I couldn't have a bicycle while my sister got a car, was foreclosed on. The bank took it. The day after the eviction notice was served, my dad called me. His voice was broken, stripped of all the arrogance and authority he used to wield like a weapon. "Mark," he rasped into the phone. "We lost the house. The movers are coming tomorrow. We have nowhere to go. Apartments are requiring huge deposits because of our ruined credit. We heard you and Sarah bought a big new house. We just need a place to stay for a few months to get back on our feet. Chloe needs a room too. Please, son. Family helps family." I stood in the kitchen of my beautiful new home. Sarah was sitting at the island, sipping coffee, watching me. I thought about the $22,000 in dinners. I thought about the ramen noodles. I thought about the whispered quote, "Order the lobster, he won't say a word." I thought about the attempt to steal my inheritance to cover up their own massive, enabling failures. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said, my voice perfectly steady, devoid of any anger or malice. Just cold, hard truth. I have 5 bedrooms, but there's no space for you here. You taught me a very valuable lesson about fiscal responsibility when I was younger. You told me handouts ruin character. I'm just honoring your parenting. Mark, please," he started to sob. "Good luck, Dad. Tell Mom she should have skipped the lobster." I hung up the phone. I blocked his number. I blocked my mother's number. I blocked Chloe. It has been exactly 8 months since the dinner that changed my life. I am a director at my company. I have a beautiful house, an incredible wife, and a growing savings account. I speak to Aunt Martha and cousin Ben regularly. We even hosted them for Thanksgiving, and Sarah made a spectacular turkey. Sometimes, late at night, I think about how close I came to living the rest of my life as their ATM. If Sarah hadn't forgotten her purse, if she hadn't paused behind that pillar, I would probably be sitting in a cramped apartment right now, writing a check to cover my parents' bankruptcy while Chloe posted Instagram photos from a yacht. But the truth came to the light. I stopped paying. And the moment I put the check down, the parasite starved. If you are reading this, and you are the reliable one in your family, if you are the one who swallows your pride to keep the peace, if you are the one reaching for the check while everyone else looks away, put the pen down. Say no. The explosion will be massive, but I promise you, the peace on the other side is worth everything.